I started actually as a classroom teacher, an elementary school teacher, and had a few different roles after that: academic coach, coordinator roles, and then ultimately became an elementary school principal. Really interesting story, honestly. I was sitting at my desk, and like other people, job descriptions that are being flown come across your email. And so we were trying to do a lot of ed tech at that time. This was, gosh, back in like 2014. And so I open up this job description and it's for the director of IT, right? And so I read it, and our retiring director of IT had been in the job for about 20 years. And so this job description was from when he was first hired. It was very outdated. And thankfully, I had a really understanding, collaborative superintendent at the time. And I just called and I said, Gary, I think we're making a mistake. This job description is really outdated. So they pulled the job description, rewrote it, comes across my desk again, right? And I open it, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, I want this job, which was not on my radar before.
Still teach you to speak up,
I
right?
know, right?
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Michael McCormick, and you are listening to the Superintendent Hot Seat, where bold superintendent leaders share the real stories behind their most difficult challenges and decisions as they work to improve student safety, wellness, and attendance in a system not yet fully prepared to support those entering our schools. And in today's episode, we are talking to Kelly May-Vollmar. And Kelly, I'm just going to dive right in. The question I'm going to ask you is, what do you believe is the major shift our schools need to make to tackle the growing issues of anxiety, depression, bullying, and violence among students, which affect their ability to learn and feel safe, as well as the teacher's capacity to teach effectively?
I appreciate that question, Mike, and I appreciate especially the focus on the staff as well as the students, because I think the major shift we have to make is an intense, holistic approach to well-being, student well-being, staff well-being, and that's multifaceted. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It certainly includes a strong focus on mental health strategies, resources, training, but there's so much more to it than that. But I think definitely in today's day and age, we have to focus on mental health more than ever.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Now, you and I, just for the listeners and the viewers, I
Yeah.
was thinking about this, Kelly. You and I go back better than a decade,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's been a minute since we've known
It's
each other.
it
And I
has.
wanted to kind of have you share a little bit about your path to the superintendency,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
we got to know each other when you
Right.
were running IT, but I think before that you had done some jobs too. So
Oh, yeah.
the reason I'm bringing this up, just to give you context, is I'm always fascinated about the path to the superintendency, and in particular for women,
Hmm.
because I was looking at some research the other day, and it's like 76% of the education workforce is female, but only
Hmm.
about 24% of women make it to the superintendency. So
Hmm.
let's kind of reverse engineer your path
Okay.
to
Okay.
success.
Yeah. You got it. You got it. Certainly, we've gone back a long ways, Mike, and that's been really, really wonderful. So I started actually as a classroom teacher, an elementary school teacher, and had a few different roles after that: academic coach, coordinator roles, and then ultimately became an elementary school principal. Really interesting story, honestly. I was sitting at my desk, and like other people, job descriptions that are being flown come across your email. And so we were trying to do a lot of ed tech at that time. This was, gosh, back in like 2014. And so I open up this job description and it's for the director of IT, right? And so I read it, and our retiring director of IT had been in the job for about 20 years. And so this job description was from when he was first hired. It was very outdated. And thankfully, I had a really understanding, collaborative superintendent at the time. And I just called and I said, Gary, I think we're making a mistake. This job description is really outdated. So they pulled the job description, rewrote it, comes across my desk again, right? And I open it, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, I want this job, which was not on my radar before.
That'll teach you to speak up,
I
right?
know, right, right. So I got the job as they rewrote it as the Chief Innovation and Information Officer, which was a very cool title, of course. Yeah. So got the job. Was really an amazing job. Got to do some fantastic work. This of course was pre-COVID, and we were going one-to-one, and we built our own LTE network to make sure that our students had internet connectivity at the time,
And
which
just
was
so people
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you guys were on the leading edge of this work.
yeah.
You had to be one of the first districts across the nation that had
There were
built out
there
your
were
own LTE.
five other districts in the nation at the time that had done it. Yes,
Gosh,
which was
kudos to
really
you
special
guys.
for me because I was always trying to keep up with Val Verde, Mike, where you were at.
No, I appreciate the shout. And thinking about it, I mean, for school districts such as Desert Sands, and I
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit about the
Yeah,
demographics of Desert Sands
sure.
too, just for context. But
Yeah,
I think those districts across the nation that had positioned themselves by really building
yeah,
infrastructure to go along with the one-to-one survived the pandemic so much better than those who were placing massive orders for Chromebooks
gosh, yeah,
after the COVID pandemic hit. And I know that there was districts that were on waiting lists for
oh,
Chromebooks
yeah,
for
yeah,
6, 8, 10 months. They just couldn't
right.
get them fast enough. So
Oh, yeah,
to have that foresight to be building out this LTE network and building your infrastructure and district, just kudos to you. And what an incredible story to be part of and to have
yeah,
this as part of your journey. Okay, so you're director of innovation and
yes, yeah,
all this amazing stuff, and
right.
pick it up from there.
Okay, so then another really, first of all, I've had amazing mentors, which has made all the difference in the world to me. And so here I am serving as the director of technology, and my superintendent at the time comes to me and says, the assistant superintendent of ed services is retiring. What do you think we should do? This is anytime someone retires, it's an opportunity, right?
That's
And
right.
so I've not met a school district where this is not true. Technology and ed services have a very hard time collaborating in the way that they really need to provide the best opportunities for students, right? And so I said, look, I don't want a new boss, but you need to take all of technology and move us under ed services. So it's an arranged marriage, and we have to work together, right? And so he did do that, but then I became the assistant superintendent of that,
Love
which
that.
was fantastic and really great work. Honestly, having technology and ed services work together like that really helped us to be able to make advances that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, that was really good. Okay, so you're assistant sup of ed
Yeah,
services.
yeah.
Life is happening to you.
Life is
You're
happening.
staying engaged, and for the audience, I mean, Kelly is in all kinds of national groups and networks, particularly around ed tech. And you stay
Yes.
active in those networks today, which I think is fabulous. So you're
Yes.
going along, minding your own business, and what happens for the next phase of your journey?
Well, we go through COVID, right? And we were very fortunate, had an amazing superintendent that led us through that very, very difficult time. And then, rightly so, decided to retire afterwards, not because of COVID, just because that was the time in his career and he was ready for that move. And so, honestly, I was not, Mike, looking to be a superintendent. I was loving the job that I was doing, I was loving the work that I was doing. But like a lot of districts, ours was really fractured because of COVID. We'd had very contentious board meetings, the community in the district, that relationship was fractured. Our internal relationships were fractured just of the stress and the isolation and everything. And so I knew that there were other people that could lead the work to bring our district back together because historically we'd been a very close knit district and community. But I didn't know if those people were going to apply, right? And I do feel like that's one of the strengths that I bring to the work that I do is that relationship element. So I applied just because I love this district so much and felt like, if no one else does apply that can do that work, I want to make sure that there's a hat in the ring that can. And so I applied, and the board very graciously offered me the position. And so this is my third year as superintendent.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and isn't it interesting? So you and I have kind of a similar path. I came up through ed services as
Right,
well, and then I was not in. I've always been passionate about technology, but ed services and technology was under the umbrella of ed services, and I think that
right.
was fantastic. But the
Yeah.
thing that I think is most beneficial to the community and the students, and it's a little self-serving, but I do think there's truth in this statement, is that thinking about the stability of leadership. There were initiatives that you started when you were assistant supervet services,
Yes.
maybe even a little bit before that when you were in the
Mhm.
director role, particularly
Yeah.
around the technology initiatives.
Right.
So you see those through as an assistant supervet services, and then you get to continue the
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
as superintendent. And so you've got to run,
Mhm.
putting all that space and time together, you've got a run of probably a decade
Yeah.
of kind of working on solving the same problems. And I think what happens too oftentimes in education is the next person comes in and they're looking for the silver bullet. They're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the immediate return on investment. And what happens, I think, from the teacher's perspective is they're like, well, we outlived the last person, and
Yes.
guess what? We're going to outlive you
We're gonna
too.
outlive this one. Yep.
And we're
Just
going to
ride the
outlive.
wave.
Yeah. And so talk to me about that dynamic as you've experienced it in Desert Sands.
Mike, that's a really great point. And it's true, right? Our staff can get initiative fatigue on such a big level because of exactly what you just described. And so I think what's great in Desert Sands, one, it just helps me to do it, it makes my job easier. And I hope it makes the job of the people that I work with easier as well. But I think one element is we're able to do things quicker and faster because we have been all working on them in different roles, but all working on the same things for over a decade together. So, for example, AI is something that districts are wrestling with right now. And I have an amazing director of technology who's done a fantastic job. But because she and I have had a relationship for at least a decade as well, right? When I kind of dip my spoon into her soup bowl and want to interject myself, there's no it's an easy roll, right? We just sit down together, the brainstorming's natural, it's really very collaborative and not a superintendent, tech director kind of thing because that relationship exists and it's work we're accustomed to doing together. So I think that's one element. I think another really big element is we've worked really hard in Desert Sands, and I'm so proud of our board to really have a strong governance team. And so one of the things that they were very receptive to when I started was developing district initiatives, like 3 district initiatives that everybody could get behind, which I think speaks to what you were talking about with initiative fatigue, right? If we're switching every year or every few years, our staff just it's hard for them to buy in and they're tired. They don't want to switch gears all the time. So I was able to talk to the board about things we had already been working on, things that we were already invested in, early literacy, college and career readiness, and strong mental health for our staff and for our students, and really help them to get behind those being our top 3 initiatives because we'd already laid the foundation and we could really move into seeing some great progress. And so those are things that I'm able to do because of that continuum that you talked about.
Yeah, kudos to you. And this idea of having a strong governance team, people may not understand how powerful that is. When you've got a governance team, board of education and superintendent who are working together in concert with one another, the
Right.
stability that brings to the entire organization all the way down to the students is super powerful. And it's really about, for me, psychological safety for people at every
Yeah.
level in the organization.
Yes.
Because when you've got change, you know people that go into education are generally pretty conservative when it comes to running their lives. We go
Right.
in because we know we're going to get a regular paycheck, we've got regular
Right.
benefits, we've got regular hours. And
Yeah.
so I think I'm speaking with broad brushstrokes, but the idea of this population of people coming together working in education, we're not necessarily excited about change.
Right.
And we can do change, but the promise of change has to be far better than what our current reality is. And so that's
Yeah.
why I loved what you were talking about. Just this idea of having trust
Hmm.
and sticking with the initiatives. And I bet there's been a time where somebody has actually come to you in Desert Sands and said, God, life, are we going to try something different at this point? I don't know if you've actually had that. I experienced that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
where people start to get a little antsy, and I'm like, "No, we're
yeah,
still working on these
yeah.
3 things."
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, at the end, because we always do, we look at the board priorities, and so we had it our first year, and after the first year, everyone was so happy. We established those priorities and established the priorities that we did. But at the end of the first year, they came and said, "Are we switching priorities for next year?" I'm like, "No, no, no. You can't move a ship that size in a year. It takes time."
It takes time. Well, hey, we're coming up to a quick break here,
Okay,
Kelly.
sounds good.
And when we come back from the break, I want to pick up back to the conversation about your journey to the superintendency and what it's been like for you finding those allies and mentors that have been
Okay,
a big part of your life.
you got it.
Let's pause here and continue this amazing conversation after a quick 30-second break for a message from our producer, Muzoom, a company rethinking student wellness with bite sized Netflix style behavior modeling videos where students can watch peers facing similar challenges and gain fresh perspectives on resolution. It's the only SEL platform that's truly click and play, enabling teachers to deliver a full SEL lesson in 15 minutes or less.
Creating a safe, supportive environment is key to our learners' success. With nearly every district prioritizing social emotional well-being to reduce suspension rates, decrease chronic absenteeism, and improve academic performance, the challenge is how to achieve this without adding to your staff's workload. Discover Muzoom, a groundbreaking student-driven platform that uses real-world choose-your-own-adventure bite-sized movies to make SEL engaging for students, easy for teachers to teach, and more cost-effective for districts to implement. Check out Muzoom today.
All right, we're back with Kelly May-Vollmar, the superintendent at Desert Sands. And I want to, just for context, before we get into the conversation about your journey to the superintendency and those that have been, instrumental. I mean, I've had those folks in my life, but talk about for people that don't know Desert Sands, where it is, what's the population of students you serve? Talk to us about that, just for
Yeah.
context.
Yeah, no problem. So, Desert Sands is located in the Coachella Valley in Southern California, near Palm Springs. That's probably the marker nationally that most people are familiar with. And there are 3 school districts out here in the valley. We sit right smack in the middle of the other 2. So we serve about 26,500 students in 34 buildings. We've got about 82% of our students on free and reduced lunch, 75% Hispanic population, 21% English language learners. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what our demographics
Awesome.
are. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So talk about, kind of your path to the superintendency, but from a woman's perspective. And has there been challenges do you feel like it's been different? Are there people that have been great allies for you
Mm,
along the way and helped you, get to this role?
yeah.
And I would say, what's some advice you might have for other women who are in education who aspire to the superintendency? And what are some things that they might do? And how can we all kind of collectively work together
Yeah.
to see more women in the role of the superintendency?
Sure. Yeah. So that's quite a few little
I know,
tidbits
I'm
there.
sorry.
No,
I took
it's
the
okay.
shotgun
I'm
approach.
gonna unpack it. I'm gonna unpack it. No, it's a great question, honestly. So I will say, I honestly am so fortunate that I have had amazing people in my life that have not only supported me, but I've had bosses that really took the approach of coaching me and pushing me in a great way to do more and to be more. And so I've been really incredibly fortunate in that sense. I will say, most recently, Scott Bailey was the superintendent here in Desert Sands and has been just a huge champion. He constantly, before I was superintendent and even afterwards, has just championed me and been there, lifted me up. I honestly I think I might be in a unique position. If I am, every superintendent needs this, but I have this like safety net of all the former superintendents in Desert Sands, like going back 5 superintendents, like they just rally around me. They call and check on me. They take me to lunch. They make sure I'm doing well. It's the most incredible safety net of people. And so I certainly want to be that, someday when I'm not in this seat anymore, for the person that comes behind me, because they've really been quite incredible. So I've appreciated them a lot. I would say, being the chief technology officer helped me a lot because I was oftentimes the only female in a room full of men and frequently had not ill will, but people saying to me, "Are you looking for your boss?" or things like, right? Not assuming that I was the chief technology officer. So navigating those waters, I think, helped prepare me a lot because even though, to your point, there are female superintendents, it's a minority of the superintendents, right? And so very often I'm on committees, I'm on panels, I'm on boards, I'm still the only woman in the room. And so it's so important to lean in. And I will say, just this to me is for anyone that's a superintendent. One of the best things that I did when I first became a superintendent was got a coach. And so Sandy Lyon, she's retired superintendent from Palm Springs Unified, has served as my coach for the first couple of years. And even now we're still working together in my 3rd year. It's a lifesaver because to me, going from an assistant superintendent to a superintendent is the biggest leap in all the times that I've advanced in my career. You don't have any previous experience to pull from for some of that work. And so it's to have someone to bounce ideas off of and to coach you and to say, yes, you're on the right track, or no, did you think of this, has been phenomenal. I would recommend that every new superintendent get a coach. I think it's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah, I've got my finger on my mouse and I'm double clicking that. And I think that there's this kind of narrative out there at the superintendency CEO level that having a coach is a sign of weakness. And here's
Mm.
how it was described to me. Olympic gold medalists have
Yes. Have
coaches.
coaches.
Have
Yeah.
coaches. And
Yes.
it's the life of the superintendency can often be a lonely one. And so talk about that just a little bit. And how have you navigated? Obviously, you got Sandy. I know
Right.
Sandy. I mean, she's
Amazing.
fabulous, fabulous, gold
Right.
standard.
Yeah.
And the fact that your previous superintendents have been there, that I think is a powerful statement to continued service of the community,
Hmm.
that they're staying engaged and want to see you be successful.
Right.
But it's a lonely job. Talk about that.
It really is. It's so interesting, Mike, because you sit kind of between a few teams, but you sit in that seat by yourself. And so, what I mean by that is obviously, I have the board who I strive to have great relationships with. And I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful, wonderful board that's incredibly supportive, but I am not a board member. They are the board members and they are my bosses.
Yeah.
So,
And you've
that
got how
element
many of
exists.
those
I
bosses?
have 5.
You have 5 bosses.
I have
See, and
5
that's one of
bosses.
the things. There is nothing in life that prepares you to have 5 bosses,
No,
who, by the way,
nothing.
are all elected officials.
Yes, and all rightly so have their own agendas, right?
That's right.
That's what, yeah, yes, exactly. So then I have cabinet, right? Who I'm a part of that team, but I'm not technically a cabinet member in the sense that I'm not an assistant superintendent. I'm the superintendent and I'm their boss. And so there's that difference there. And then of course I have my team in my office that I work with as well. But so I get, there are times that I have great collaboration and great experience, but there's always, I'm not completely one of the team the way I was when I was an assistant superintendent, right? I am the superintendent. And so it's a lonely seat. I think that's why coaching is so vital. I will also say that in every job I've had, I've strived to have a strong personal learning network. One, because I just think to stay on the edge and to stay sharp, you need that. But I need it relationally too. And so anytime we go to a conference, I'll text some of my superintendent buddies in the region and try to grab a meal together or something. Just because the more we can develop those relationships, the less isolated you feel. And I think that you have to have people that you can talk to about things that no one else quite understands what you're going through because they're not
So
really
true.
living it.
And one of the things that we've kind of talked about on the show is that when times are tough, it's human nature to isolate.
Absolutely.
And actually, what you want to try to do is go the opposite direction
Yes. Yeah.
and reach out to people. And I think that's just good mental health advice because it is
Yes.
human nature. Things aren't going well, you don't
Right.
feel good, you
Yeah.
get depression sets in, you
Right.
isolate. And what happens is that little voice in your head tends to
Yeah.
conjure up things that are far worse than reality.
So much worse than they are, right? Because we all have our filter that's
That's
a
right.
part of our baggage that we
That's
carry
right.
around with us, right? And so we hear things through that filter. And so
Yes.
to your point, it gets magnified, it gets worse. We write a storyline that may not even be the storyline.
That's right.
That's to me, that's Mike, I think that's so key because I have a picture in my office of a roller coaster. And it's a conversation Sandy and I had early on. And that's what this job is like. You will in a 3 minute span, you'll have a high and a low, and then you'll be back up again. But I think it's recognizing and embracing that that's the work. And to me, what helps me to do that is when I reach out when things are hard, because here's what happens. Something hard happens, and if you do reach out to someone else, which you should, after they've listened and they've been empathetic, what you're going to get is, oh yeah, that reminds me of a time when this happened to me, right? And then all of a sudden you go, this isn't just me that this happens to, right? This happens all over the place. And it just helps what seems bad and awful and heavy to be a little bit lighter. You start to see that you can navigate through it, you can find a solution, but it oftentimes takes talking to people to get to that place.
Yeah, you discover you're not alone,
You're
right?
not alone.
You're not alone. There's somebody
Right.
who's been there, done
Yeah.
that, got the
Yep.
t-shirt
That's
and,
right.
and survived
Yes.
and survived. I
Yep.
love that.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Kelly. I could talk all day with
Right.
you, but we are coming to the end of the episode.
Okay.
And I always ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
These are like rapid fire questions that I'm going
I'm
to
ready.
fire away at you.
Okay.
So just first thing that comes to mind. Um, would you rather speak every language fluently or play every instrument perfectly?
Oh, every language fluently.
Are you a salty or sweet person?
Oh, I'm probably more salty.
And
I
that's
try
the
to be
snacks.
sweet.
What's one thing you can't live without?
Coffee.
Your coffee. Coffee
Yeah,
gets you
and my
going.
husband. Coffee
Yeah.
and my husband.
You know, we don't, I'm going to press pause. I'm going to put a pin in the rapid fire questions for a
Okay.
second because I think that is such a powerful statement. We would not be able to do the work that we do, right, without a life partner
That's right.
that is super duper supportive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
kudos to you and having that support system that allows you to do the work that,
Yes.
to be in service to others.
Absolutely. I could not do it without him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. All right,
Yeah.
I'm taking the pin out. We're
Okay,
going
take it
back.
out. Here we go.
What's a hobby you've always wanted to pick up but haven't yet?
My goodness. I don't even know. Skiing. Like
Skiing.
really well. I've skied before, but I'm not good.
Do you want to? Okay,
I'd
right
like to
on.
be a good skier.
And what's your go-to song to get motivated, to get pumped up?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so I have a whole playlist, but lately I've been listening to Lainey Wilson. I love her. I
Yeah,
think she's
she's
awesome, right? And
fabulous.
so, yeah, so I currently like 4x4 by You. I don't know, just I like the has nothing to do with anything about, work or anything. I just like it.
It's just a great jam, right?
It's a great jam. It's a great jam. Yes.
I love that. And I'm
Yeah.
going to throw you a curveball.
Okay, go for it.
And this is just, this will be the final question.
Okay.
Kelly, what are you most grateful for?
Oh my gosh. Um, Honestly, you know what? It's funny. I was not even related to the podcast, but I was thinking about this in the car on the way in today. I'm so thankful for the journey that I've been able to be on in my life. It hasn't been perfect. It's had, some really intense moments of trial. But I am so thankful for the journey and for all the people that I've been able to encounter along the way. And just all those things I've lived through and all the people that I've encountered have made me the person that I am today.
Yeah, I love that. What a great way to sum things up.
Mm,
And I always tell people, and I think you would identify with this, is those trials in our lives serve as the greatest assets
they
moving
do.
forward, right? So when you're in that moment and you think life is just, how could it get any worse?
Right.
I'm going through this thing. I feel alone. I feel terrible. Life's not going to, continue in the same manner.
Yeah.
And then those things become, like I said, your greatest assets
Yeah.
moving forward, and oftentimes in service to others.
Yes.
And you pay
Absolutely.
it forward and you give back. And if you can just have that persistence and
Yes.
stay in gratitude as
Yes.
much as
Always.
possible. And I can tell, we haven't talked about gratitude, but I can tell you're a person who stays in gratitude.
I strive to. Absolutely. There's no other way to live, honestly. We can't be miserable in the work that we do. It's too important, and the people that we're serving are too important.
Kelly May-Vollmar today, Superintendent of Desert Sands. Thanks for being on the Superintendent Hot Seat.
Thanks for having me.